Hana Kang sat in the cold metal chair and tried not to look nervous. Across the table, 3 aliens stared at her with expressions she could not read. The reptilian one, Commander Thexval, had vertical pupils that never blinked. The insect-like Officer Quilnara made clicking sounds with her mandibles. The crystalline enforcer Breckmore glowed faintly in the dim light, his body refracting colors that hurt to look at directly. Behind them, a wide window showed another room. 4 small furry creatures paced back and forth. They looked like a mix between cats and bears with round ears and thick tails. Their silver fur caught the light as they moved. Every few seconds, one of them would press tiny paws against the glass and stare toward Hana. "Dr. Kang," Commander Thexval said, his voice harsh and dry. "You have been seen with 4 Valeran cubs for 3 weeks. Why?" Hana took a breath. "I haven't been with them. They've been near me." "The same thing," Quilnara clicked, her translator turning the sounds into words. "You have violated station regulations. Class 4 species must remain in containment. You are not authorized to interact with them." "I didn't take them from containment," Hana said. She kept her voice calm and steady, the way she had practiced. "They came to me." Breckmore leaned forward. His crystalline body made grinding sounds. "Impossible! Valeran cubs are non-sentient. They cannot make such decisions. They follow food. They follow warmth. They follow dominant adults of their species. You are none of these things." Hana glanced at the window. The smallest cub was drawing something on the fogged glass with one paw. It looked like circles connected by lines. "They don't follow me," she said quietly. "They decide to walk the same path." The 3 security officers exchanged looks. Thexval pulled up a holographic display. Images appeared in the air between them. Hana saw herself in the station cafeteria with 4 cubs sitting under her table. Another image showed her in the laboratory with the cubs watching from a corner. Another showed her walking through a corridor with all 4 cubs trailing behind her in a line. "These images show following behavior," Thexval said, clear and obvious. "Those images show them being in the same place at the same time as me," Hana corrected. "That's different." Quilnara's mandibles clacked rapidly. Her translator struggled to keep up. "You split hairs with words. The Valeran Collective has filed a formal complaint. They say you have stolen their offspring. They say you have corrupted young minds that are not yet minds at all. They demand your removal from the station and a lifetime ban from all galactic facilities." The words hit Hana like cold water. A lifetime ban meant never working in space again. It meant never studying alien species. It meant the end of everything she had worked for. But she forced herself to stay calm. "May I ask a question?" she said. Breckmore's glow intensified. "You are not in a position to ask questions." "I'll take that as a yes," Hana said, and immediately regretted her tone. She needed to be careful. "If the cubs are non-sentient, as you say, how can I corrupt them?" "You can't corrupt something that doesn't think." Silence filled the room. The 3 officers looked at each other again. Finally, Thexval spoke. "You imprint on them, like a parent bird to its young. You make them dependent. When they mature and gain sentience at age 12, they will be damaged, unable to integrate into Valeran society." Hana shook her head. "I've done nothing to imprint on them. I've never restricted their movement. I've never forced them to stay near me. I've never even called them to me." "Then explain their behavior," Quilnara demanded. Hana looked at the window again. All 4 cubs were watching her now. Their eyes were bright and focused. The smallest one tapped on the glass, and the others turned to look at it. They seemed to have a silent conversation. Then all 4 of them sat down at the same time and continued staring. 3 weeks ago," Hana began, "I was doing a routine inspection of Cargo Bay 7. There was a damaged transport ship there. The crew was in stasis pods waiting for rescue, but in the back of the bay I found these 4 cubs. They were alone, scared. The life support in their section had failed. They were cold and hungry." She paused, remembering that moment. The cubs had been huddled together in the darkness, shivering. When her light had found them, they hadn't run. They had just stared at her with those bright eyes. Station protocol said to put them in holding cells until their people arrived. Hana continued. "But they were so small, so frightened. I couldn't just leave them in that cold, dark place. So I sat down on the floor about 10 feet away from them. I didn't move toward them. I didn't try to touch them. I just sat there. That is when the imprinting began," Thexval said. "No," Hana said firmly. "That is when they made their first choice. After 6 hours, the smallest one walked over to me. Not for food. I had put food near them and they hadn't touched it. This cub walked up to me and put a broken data pad in my lap. Then it pointed at the pad and looked at me. Breckmore made a grinding sound that might have been a laugh. Cub's gesture. It means nothing. It wasn't just a gesture, Hannah said. It was a request. The cub wanted me to fix the data pad, so I did. When I got it working, the cub took it back and showed it to the others. They gathered around it and started touching the screen. They were looking at star maps. Quilnara's antennae twitched. Pre-programmed behavior. Cubs do not understand star maps. These ones did, Hannah said. I watched them for another hour. They were teaching each other how to use the controls. They were pointing at different stars and making sounds at each other. They were communicating. The door behind the officers opened. A new figure entered the room and Hannah's breath caught in her throat. It was a Valeran adult, massive and imposing. He stood 9 feet tall with golden fur that shimmered in the light. His eyes were the same bright color as the cub's, but they held something the cub's eyes didn't. Coldness. I am Ambassador Krelthar of the Valeran Collective, the newcomer said. His voice was deep and resonant. I have come to retrieve our cubs and see that this human faces proper justice. He looked at Hannah with something that might have been disgust. You have poisoned young animals with false ideas. You have made them believe they are more than they are. This is cruelty, not kindness. Hannah stood up even though she knew it made her look small next to the towering alien. They're not animals. They're people. Small people, young people, but people. Krelthar's lips pulled back, showing sharp teeth. They are cubs. When they reach maturity, they will become people. Not before. This is our way. This is our biology. You cannot change it with your human sentimentality. I'm not trying to change anything, Hannah said. I'm just telling you what I saw. What I see every day. Those cubs think. They feel, they choose. That's not sentiment. That's fact. The ambassador turned to the security officers. I want them separated immediately. Every moment she spends near them causes more damage. Return them to proper containment. Return them to the collective. We will repair what we can. Behind the glass, the 4 cubs suddenly became agitated. They pressed against the window, making high-pitched sounds. The smallest one started hitting the glass with both paws over and over. Hannah's heart broke at the sound. You can't take them, she said, her voice breaking. Please, just let me prove what they are. Give me time. Time? Krelthar laughed, a sound like distant thunder. Time for you to complete your corruption? No, this ends now. The security officer stood up. Thexval pulled out a datapad. Dr. Hannah Kang, you are hereby charged with unauthorized interaction with Class 4 species, potential theft of Valeran property, and violation of interspecies protocols. You will be held pending trial. The cubs will be remanded to Ambassador Krelthar's custody. Hannah felt tears on her cheeks but didn't wipe them away. Through the window she watched the smallest cub draw one more shape on the glass. It was crude and simple but clear. A large figure and 4 small figures standing in a circle. Not in a line. A circle. As guards came to take her away, Hannah heard herself say, they don't follow. They decide, and you're going to have to prove they don't. 3 weeks earlier, Hannah had been having a normal day. She walked through the corridors of Station Meridian 7 with her assistant, Bin Park, reviewing data on their shared tablet. They were supposed to check Cargo Bay 7 for biological contamination. A transport ship had docked there 2 days ago with engine trouble, and protocol required inspection before repairs could continue. This should be quick, Bin said, scrolling through the checklist. Just standard scans. Then we can get back to the lab. Hannah nodded, only half listening. She was thinking about her research on cross-species communication patterns. The work was slow but fascinating. Every species in the galaxy had different ways of expressing ideas, emotions, and needs. Some used sound, others used color, some used chemical signals. Humans used words, but words were just one option among thousands. The cargo bay door opened with a hiss. The space inside was enormous, designed to hold ships of various sizes. The damaged transport sat in the center, dark and silent. Its hull was scorched in places. Small repair drones floated around it, scanning for damage. Life support failed in sections 3 through 7. Bin read from his tablet. The crew is in stasis pods. Medical team already checked them. They'll be fine. What about passengers? Hannah asked. Bin checked his screen. Manifest shows 4 Volaran cubs. They were in a separate compartment with automatic life support. Should be fine, Hana frowned. Should be? The system failed for 30 minutes before backup kicked in, Ben admitted. But Volaran are tough. They can handle cold better than we can. Something bothered Hana about that. Cubs were young. Young bodies weren't as tough as adult bodies. That was true for almost every species. She walked toward the transport ship, her scanner in hand. Hana, the cubs are probably sleeping, Ben called after her. Don't wake them up. We're not supposed to interact. But Hana wasn't planning to interact. She just wanted to make sure they were okay. She climbed up the loading ramp and entered the ship. Inside, emergency lights cast everything in red. The air was cold enough to see her breath. She followed the corridor to the rear compartment where the cubs should be. The door was open. The room beyond was dark. Hana turned on her light and swept it across the space. At first, she saw nothing. Then her light found the corner. 4 small shapes were pressed together in a tight huddle. Silver fur reflected her beam. Hello? Hana said softly. I'm not going to hurt you. The cubs didn't move. She took a step closer and saw that they were shivering. Their compartment had been the coldest part of the ship. The life support failure had lasted longer here than anywhere else. Food containers were scattered on the floor, some still sealed. Water dispensers blinked red, indicating they were empty. Ben, Hana said into her communicator. Get medical up here. The cubs need help. On it, Ben's voice crackled back. Are they injured? I don't think so. But they're cold and probably dehydrated. Hana sat down on the floor about 10 feet from the huddled cubs. She didn't want to scare them by moving too close. I'm going to stay with them until help arrives. Hana, you shouldn't. I'm staying, Hana said firmly. They're scared. Through her communicator, she heard Ben sigh. Fine, medical team is on their way. 20 minutes. Hana switched off the communicator and looked at the cubs. They were watching her now. 4 pairs of bright eyes reflected her light. They didn't make any sounds. They just stared. It's okay, Hana said quietly. I know you're scared, but you're safe now. The ship is safe. Help is coming. She didn't know if they could understand her words. Most non-sentient animals couldn't understand complex language, but her tone might help. Calm and gentle. That worked with most species. The cubs didn't move. Minutes passed. Hana stayed perfectly still, just sitting there in the cold darkness. She thought about how frightening this must be for them. Separated from adults, stuck in a broken ship, cold and hungry and alone. Even if they weren't fully sentient yet, they could still feel fear. After 20 minutes, one of the cubs moved. It was the smallest one, noticeably smaller than its siblings. It took a tentative step forward, then stopped. The others made quiet chirping sounds as if warning it. But the small cub took another step. Hana held her breath. She didn't want to spook it. She stayed perfectly still and kept her expression neutral. The cub came closer, slowly, stopping every few steps to look back at the others. When it was about 3 feet away, it stopped. Then it did something unexpected. It picked up an object from the floor and carried it toward Hana. It was a broken data pad, its screen cracked and dark. The cub placed it carefully in Hana's lap, then sat back and looked at her expectantly. Hana stared at the data pad, her mind racing. This wasn't random behavior. The cub had brought her something specific and waited for a response. That suggested understanding, purpose, maybe even problem-solving. You want me to fix this? Hana asked. The cub chirped once and tapped the data pad with one paw. Hana picked up the device and examined it. The crack was superficial. The power cell had just disconnected. She popped open the back panel, reseated the cell and pressed the power button. The screen flickered and came to life. The small cub made an excited sound and reached for the data pad. Hana handed it over. The cub carried it back to the others, and all 4 of them gathered around it. They began touching the screen, making soft chirping sounds at each other. Hana watched in fascination. The cubs were looking at star maps. More than that, they were interacting with the maps. One cub would point at a star system and another would swipe to a different view. They seemed to be showing each other things, teaching each other. The door behind Hana opened. She turned to see Ben entering with 2 medical technicians. One was Yuna Im, a human engineer who sometimes helped with biological cases. The other was a Trell medic named Hawks. Here, Hana said, standing up. 4 cubs. They seem healthy, just cold and scared. Yuna walked closer, her scanner active. Vitals look good. A little dehydrated, but nothing serious. She glanced at the cubs, who were still focused on the data pad. What are they doing? Looking at star maps, Hana said. Bin frowned. Cubs don't understand star maps. That's just random touching. But Hana was watching the cubs carefully. One of them touched a specific star system, then looked at another cub and made a series of chirps. The second cub chirped back and touched a different system. Then the first cub seemed to nod and made a longer series of sounds. That's not random, Hana said quietly. That's conversation. Yuna moved her scanner closer to the cubs. Brain activity is higher than expected for cubs this age. That's interesting. What does that mean? Bin asked. It means they're thinking more than they should be, Yuna said. According to Valeran biology, cubs don't develop complex cognition until after their physical transformation at age 12. But these scans show cognition levels consistent with sentient beings. Hawks, the medic, made a whistling sound of concern. That cannot be correct. Valeran cubs are classified as non-sentient. The collective is very clear about this. Maybe the collective is wrong, Hana said. The words hung in the air. Bin looked at her with wide eyes. Hana, you can't just say things like that. The Valeran collective has been part of Galactic society for 600 years. They know their own biology, do they? Hana watched the cubs. The smallest one had given the data pad to another, who was now showing something to the group. Or do they know what they've always believed? Those aren't always the same thing. Yuna knelt down near the cubs, moving slowly. She held out a water container. Hey, little ones. You must be thirsty. The cubs looked at the container, then at each other. After a moment, the largest cub walked forward and took the container. It didn't drink immediately. Instead, it carried the water back to the others. It gave the container to the smallest cub first. Hana felt something tighten in her chest. That was care. That was thinking about others. That was exactly what sentient beings did. We need to report this, Huck said nervously. If these cubs are showing sentient behavior, it's a major issue. Report what? Bin asked. That they shared water? That they looked at pictures? The collective will say it's instinct. Is it instinct? Hana asked. She pointed at the cubs. Look at them. Really look. They all watched as the 4 cubs finished drinking. Then the largest cub used its paws to arrange the empty containers in a neat line. The second cub started touching the data pad again. The third cub moved to the warmest part of the room and chirped at the others. They all moved to join it, settling into a new huddle in the better location. They're adapting, Yuna said softly. Making decisions based on their environment. That's not simple instinct. Hana sat down again, this time closer to the cubs. They watched her but didn't seem afraid anymore. What if we've been wrong about them? She asked. What if they've been sentient all along and nobody noticed because nobody expected it? Bin shook his head. That's a huge claim. The kind of claim that could cause a diplomatic incident. I know, Hana said. But look at them. Tell me they're not thinking. Tell me they're not aware. Nobody spoke. The cubs chirped quietly among themselves, their bright eyes reflecting the emergency lights. The smallest one drew shapes in the frost on the floor. Simple shapes but deliberate. Circles and lines. Station protocol says they go to holding until their people arrive, Hawk said finally. That should be in 3 days. Hana looked at the cold, dark room. I'm not leaving them in this ship. Hana, Bin started. I'm not, she said firmly. They've been cold and scared for 2 days. I'm staying with them until they're moved somewhere better. And she did. The holding cell was small but clean. Hana sat on the narrow bench and stared at the wall. She had been here for 6 hours since the security officers had taken her from the interrogation room. Nobody had come to speak with her. Nobody had brought food or water. She was just alone with her thoughts, and her thoughts were not good company. She kept seeing the cubs pressed against the glass. The way they had tried to reach her. The sounds they had made. What would happen to them now? Would Ambassador Krelthar take them back to the collective? Would they be separated? Would they be punished for the behaviors they had learned? The door opened. A human man entered, tall and thin with graying hair. Hana recognized him immediately. Dei Shin was the station administrator, her ultimate boss. His expression was carefully neutral. Dr. Kang, he said, sitting down across from her. We need to talk. Am I being deported? Hana asked. That depends, Dei said. The situation is complicated. Ambassador Krelthar wants you removed immediately. He's filed formal charges with the Galactic Council, but there are some people who want to hear your side of the story. What people? Me for one, Day said. I've reviewed the security footage from the past 3 weeks, all of it. Every moment you spent near those cubs. He pulled out a tablet and placed it on the table between them. I need you to explain what I saw. Hana looked at the screen. It showed her in the station cafeteria eating lunch. The 4 cubs sat under her table watching the other species walk past. They came to the cafeteria on their own, Hana said. I didn't call them. I didn't bring them. Day swiped to another image. Hana in the laboratory working on samples, the cubs in the corner watching quietly. They followed you to work, Day said. They walked to the same place I walked, Hana corrected. That's not the same thing as following. Explain the difference. Hana thought carefully about how to put it into words. Following means you're making someone go where you go. These cubs were never forced. They chose. Every single time they chose. I have proof. She reached for the tablet and pulled up her personal files. I recorded everything. Not because I planned to break rules, but because I wanted to understand their behavior. She opened a video file. This is day 4, watch. The video showed Hana leaving her quarters in the morning. She walked down the corridor without looking back. After a few seconds, 4 small shapes appeared following her path. But then Hana stopped at an intersection. She turned left. The cubs stopped at the same intersection, looked at each other, and turned right. They went a different direction, Day observed. Exactly, Hana said. They didn't follow me that morning. They went wherever they wanted. This happened multiple times. Sometimes they would be with me. Sometimes they wouldn't. It was always their choice. She pulled up another video. Day 7. The laboratory. In this recording, Hana was working at her station. The cubs were across the room playing with some kind of puzzle toy. One of them solved it, opening a compartment to reveal treats inside. Instead of eating the treats immediately, the cub showed the others how to solve the puzzle. Each cub took a turn learning the technique. They're teaching each other, Hana said. That's not instinct. That's culture, knowledge being passed from one individual to another. Day watched in silence. Hana pulled up more videos. The cubs drawing pictures with frost on a cold window. The cubs organizing objects by color and size. The cubs creating a simple musical rhythm by tapping on pipes in a specific pattern. None of this proves sentience, Day said. But his voice lacked conviction. Then what would prove it? Hana asked. What would they need to do? Write an essay? Build a spaceship? They're young. But being young doesn't mean being non-sentient. The door opened again. This time several people entered. Bin, Yuna, a woman Hana didn't recognize, and the same security officers from before. Behind them came Ambassador Krelthar, his golden fur seeming to fill the small room. This is Jinno, Day said, gesturing to the unknown woman. She's a psychologist who specializes in childhood development across species. Jin bowed slightly to Hana. I've been reviewing your case. It's fascinating. This is not a social visit, Krelthar said coldly. I came to ensure the cubs are removed from this corrupting influence. Ambassador, Day said carefully. Before any decisions are made, we need to review all the evidence. What evidence? This human stole our cubs. The evidence is clear. May I speak? Jin asked. When Day nodded, she stepped forward. I've studied the recordings Dr. Kang made. I've also studied historical records of Valeran cubs. With respect, Ambassador, there are patterns in this data that concern me. Krelthar's eyes narrowed. What patterns? Jin pulled up images on a large screen. These are records from Valeran educational facilities over the past 200 years. Reports of cubs showing unusual behavior, creating art, forming complex social bonds, demonstrating problem-solving beyond what should be possible for non-sentient beings. She paused. These reports were all classified as anomalies or explained away as instinct. But when you look at them together, they suggest something else, which is, Commander Thexavel asked, that Valeran cubs have always been sentient, Jin said quietly. But nobody wanted to see it. The room erupted. Krelthar roared in anger. The security officers started talking over each other. Bin looked shocked. Only Hana stayed silent, watching the ambassador's face. This is outrageous, Krelthar snarled. You insult my people. You insult our entire civilization. I'm not trying to insult anyone, Jin said calmly. I'm presenting data. Science doesn't care about politics or feelings. It cares about truth. Our biology is well understood, Krelthar insisted. Cubs transform at age 12. Before transformation, they are animals. After transformation, they are people. This is fact. Physical transformation, yes, Jin agreed. But physical transformation and cognitive development are not always the same thing. Human children are fully conscious from birth, even though their bodies continue to develop for years. Why couldn't the same be true for Valeran? Because we know our own species, Krelthar said. Do you? Una spoke up unexpectedly. Everyone turned to look at her. She seemed embarrassed but continued. I mean, with respect, how would you know? Cubs are separated from their parents at age 3 in your society. They're raised in group facilities by caretakers who believe they're non-sentient. Nobody talks to them like people. Nobody asks them questions or expects complex answers. If you never treat someone like a person, how would you ever know if they were one? Silence fell. Hana saw something flicker across Krelthar's face. Not anger this time. Something else. Uncertainty maybe, or fear. This is not your concern, human, he said, but the force had left his voice. Day stood up. Actually, it is our concern. This station operates under Galactic Council law. One of those laws is the Sentient Self-Determination Accord. If there is reasonable doubt about a being's classification, they have the right to demonstrate their own sentience. The Cubs are not old enough for such rights, Krelthar said. The Accord has no age restriction, Jin said. It was written specifically to prevent the denial of personhood, based on arbitrary classifications. Age, size, physical form, none of these matter. Only the capacity for conscious thought. Krelthar turned to the window. Beyond the glass, in the observation room, the 4 Cubs were still there. They had been moved but not separated. They sat together in a huddle, occasionally looking toward the door. What do you propose? The ambassador asked finally. A test, Day said. Give Dr. Kang 30 days with the Cubs. Under observation. Recorded constantly. At the end of 30 days, we bring in experts from multiple species. They will evaluate the Cubs and determine if there is evidence of sentience. And if there is? Krelthar asked. Then we invoke the self-determination clause, Jin said. We let the Cubs choose their own path. Cubs cannot choose, Krelthar said. Then you have nothing to worry about, Hana said quietly. If they can't choose, the test will prove you right. The ambassador turned to face her. For a long moment, they stared at each other. Hana saw something ancient in his eyes. Something that might have been pain. Very well, he said. 30 days. But I will be watching. And when this test proves what I know to be true, you will face full consequences for your actions. Agreed, Hana said. Day nodded. The Cubs will remain on the station under joint custody. Dr. Kang will be released to continue her work. All interactions will be recorded. He looked at everyone in the room. This is unprecedented. Let's make sure we do it right. As the others filed out, Hana stayed in her seat. Through the window, she saw one of the Cubs look up, as if sensing her presence even though it couldn't possibly see her. The smallest one drew another picture on the fogged glass. The same image as before, figures in a circle connected by lines. 30 days to prove they were people. 30 days to change how an entire civilization saw its own children. 30 days to show that choosing and following were not the same thing at all. Hana took a deep breath. It wasn't much time, but it would have to be enough. 28 days had passed. Hana stood in the observation room watching the Cubs through one-way glass. They were bigger now, healthier. Their silver fur had grown thicker and shinier. But more than their physical growth, something else had changed. They moved with purpose. They communicated with intention. They created things. In the room, the Cubs were working on a project. They had arranged colored blocks into patterns on the floor. The largest Cub would place a block, then step back. The others would look at it, sometimes moving blocks around, sometimes adding new ones. They were building something together, though Hana couldn't tell what yet. Brain scans show consistent patterns of complex thought, Una said, reading from her tablet. She stood next to Hana, along with Bin and Jin. Memory formation, pattern recognition, emotional processing. Everything we'd expect from a sentient being. Krelthar will say it's pre-transformation development, Bin noted. That they're just maturing faster than normal. Let him say what he wants, Jin said. Tomorrow, the evaluation committee arrives. 12 experts from 12 different species. They'll see what we see. Hana pressed her hand against the glass. The smallest Cub looked up as if feeling her presence. It walked over to the glass and pressed its paw against the spot where her hand was, separated by inches of transparent material. They know we're watching, Hana said quietly. They know a lot more than that, Jin said. She pulled up a video on her tablet. Look at this. From yesterday. The video showed Hana sitting in the room with the cubs. She was reading from a datapad about different star systems. The cubs sat in a semicircle listening. When she finished, the largest cub stood up and went to a wall screen. It touched the controls awkwardly at first, then with growing confidence. An image appeared, a star system from the reading. The cub pointed at a planet and made a series of chirps. What's it saying? Yuna asked. I've been working on their language, Jin said. It's not complex yet, but it has structure. Grammar. That sequence translates roughly to cold world, water frozen, life possible beneath. Bin stared at the screen. It understood the reading. It remembered the information. It formed an opinion about it. More than that, Jin said. It wanted to share that opinion with others. That's not just intelligence. That's the desire to communicate knowledge. That's what separates sentient beings from smart animals. The door opened. Dee entered with Ambassador Krelthar. The Valeran looked tired. His golden fur had lost some of its luster. He walked to the glass and stood there silently, watching the cubs. They have grown, he said finally. In many ways, Day agreed. Tomorrow's evaluation will prove nothing, Krelthar said, but his voice lacked the anger from before. You have taught them tricks. The committee will see through it. They're not tricks, Hana said. They're not performing for treats. They're being themselves. Krelthar turned to her. Do you understand what you are asking of my people? If you are right, if cubs are truly sentient, then everything we have built is wrong. Our educational system, our family structure, our entire society is based on the belief that cubs are incomplete beings waiting to become whole. I'm not asking anything of your people, Hana said. I'm just saying what is true. What you do with that truth is up to you. The ambassador looked back at the cubs. The smallest one was still at the glass, paw pressed against it. That one, he said. It seems attached to you. We're friends, Hana said simply. Cubs do not have friends. They have litter mates, pack members. Then maybe you should update your understanding of cubs, Jin said. Krelthar's eyes flashed, but he didn't respond. Instead, he spoke quietly, almost to himself. I was raised in the old way, taken from my birth parents at 3, placed in a facility with 50 other cubs. The caretakers fed us, kept us warm, but they never spoke to us as if we understood. I remember being confused, scared. I remember wanting to ask questions, but I had no words. Nobody gave me words. Hana felt her throat tighten. How old were you when you got words? 12, Krelthar said. After the transformation, I was given language education. They told me I was now a person. Before, I had been an animal. But I remember those years. I remember thinking, feeling, wondering about the world. He paused. I just always believed I was wrong to remember those things, that my mind was playing tricks, that I was imagining consciousness before it was truly there. Or, Jin said gently, you really were conscious. You really were a person even then, and nobody acknowledged it. The ambassador's shoulders sagged. It was the first time Hana had seen him look vulnerable. If that is true, he said slowly, then I spent 9 years as a prisoner, and I have spent my entire adult life perpetuating that same imprisonment on others. Nobody spoke. In the room beyond the glass, the cubs finished their pattern. When they stepped back, Hana could finally see what they had built. It was a map of the station rendered in colored blocks. The cafeteria in blue, the laboratory in green, the living quarters in yellow, and in the center a small red block representing where they were now. They made a map, Bin whispered. They understand where they are in physical space. The largest cub picked up a small figure, a toy they had been given. It placed the figure on the yellow blocks, in the section that represented Hana's quarters. Then it looked at the glass and chirped. It's asking about you, Jin said to Hana. It wants to know where you are. Hana felt tears on her cheeks. She tapped on the glass. All 4 cubs looked up immediately. She pointed at herself, then at the red block on their map. The largest cub seemed to understand. It picked up 4 more small figures and placed them on the red block, right next to where it had placed the figure representing Hana. They understand symbolic representation, Yuna said, her voice full of wonder. They know those figures aren't actually us. They know it's a representation. That's abstract thinking. Krelthar watched in silence. Then he did something unexpected. He walked to the door that led into the cub's room. "May I?" he asked Day. "It's being recorded," Day said. "But yes." The ambassador opened the door and stepped through. The cubs immediately turned to face him. They didn't run. They didn't cower. They stood their ground and watched him approach. The evaluation room was filled with beings from across the galaxy. 12 experts sat in a curved row, representing 12 different species and 12 different perspectives on consciousness. Behind them, screens displayed data, videos, and brain scans. In the center of the room, in a space designed for comfort, the 4 cubs waited. Hana sat in the back with Bin, Yuna, and Jin. Her heart pounded so hard she could hear it in her ears. Everything had led to this moment. 30 days of observation, tests, and recording. 30 days of watching the cubs grow and learn and simply be themselves. Now others would judge whether that was enough. Wu Nam, a human diplomat with kind eyes and silver hair, stood at the front. He had been chosen to lead the evaluation because he had no stake in the outcome. He wasn't Valeran, wasn't human, wasn't biased toward any particular view. He was simply there to find truth. "We have reviewed all evidence," Wu said, his voice calm and measured. "We have seen the recordings. We have studied the data. We have consulted experts in biology, psychology, and cognitive science. Now we wish to interact with the subjects directly." He looked at the cubs. "With your permission." The largest cub stood up. It walked to where Wu stood and looked up at him. Then it made a series of chirps and gestures. "It says yes," Jin translated from her seat. "It says they understand why they are here. Can you tell us your names?" Wu asked gently. The cubs looked at each other. The largest one made a sound that the translator couldn't interpret. Wu frowned and tried again. "I apologize. Do you have names?" The cub went to the screen on the wall. It touched the controls and pulled up an image of stars. It pointed at one bright star, then at itself. Then it pulled up a different star and pointed at the second cub. The pattern continued for all 4 cubs. "They're using star names," one of the experts said, a floating jellyfish-like being called Rixinal. "Interesting. That suggests they think of themselves as distinct individuals." "In Valeran culture, cubs don't receive names until after transformation," another expert noted. This one was Valeran, a female elder named Talaran. "But they may have given themselves names. May I ask them?" Wu nodded. Talaran stood and approached the cubs. She spoke in the Valeran language, and the largest cub responded. A conversation unfolded in chirps and gestures. When it finished, Talaran turned back to the committee with tears in her eyes. "They did give themselves names," she said, based on stars they saw through the windows of the cargo bay where Dr. Kang found them. "They chose the stars that made them feel safe." She paused. "That is a deeply personal act. Choosing what makes you feel safe. Naming yourself based on that feeling. That is not something an animal does." "Animals can feel safe," another expert argued. "That proves nothing." "But animals do not create language to express the concept of safety," Talaran countered. "These cubs have developed grammar, vocabulary, and symbolic thinking. They have culture. They teach each other. They create art. They solve problems collectively. They are not waiting to become people. They are people." Murmurs spread through the committee. Ambassador Krelthar, sitting in the observation section, remained silent. His expression was unreadable. "We have one more question," Wu said. "The most important question." He knelt down to the cub's level. "You have been with Dr. Kang for 30 days. You have learned many things, seen many possibilities. Now you must choose. Do you wish to return to the Valeran Collective? Do you wish to stay on this station? Do you wish to go somewhere else? The choice is yours. No one will force you." The 4 cubs huddled together. They chirped and gestured among themselves, having what was clearly an intense discussion. After several minutes, they broke apart. The largest cub stepped forward first. It went to the screen and pulled up an image of the Valeran homeworld. It pointed at it, then at itself. But then it did something else. It pulled up images of the cub facilities. It pointed at those buildings and made a sharp negative sound. Then it drew on the screen with its paw, a new building with windows and open spaces. It pointed at this drawing, then at itself again. "It wants to go home," Talaran said slowly. "But not to the facilities as they are. It wants to change them." Wu looked at the cub. "You wish to return to the collective and reform how cubs are raised?" The cub chirped once. A clear yes, that is very brave, Wu said quietly, and very difficult. Are you certain? The cub looked back at its littermates, then at the committee. It made a longer series of sounds. Jin translated, someone must tell the others. The ones still there. Still waiting. Still thinking they are not real yet. Someone must tell them the truth. The second cub stepped forward. It went to Hana and pressed against her leg. Then it pulled up images of the station, the school, the laboratories. It made happy chirping sounds. This one wishes to stay, Wu said. To learn and study here? The cub chirped yes. It looked at Hana with bright, trusting eyes. Hana had to bite her lip to keep from crying. The third cub approached the screen. It pulled up an image that surprised everyone. Earth. The blue and green planet rotated slowly on the display. The cub pointed at it, then at itself. You want to go to Earth? Wu asked. May I ask why? The cub made a series of chirps and gestures. Jin translated again. Because humans understand. Humans remember when they were told they weren't people. Humans fought to change it. This cub wants to learn that history. Wants to understand how to fight. Silence filled the room. The weight of that statement settled on everyone. Here was a child, barely past infancy by galactic standards, already thinking about revolution, reform, and the long struggle for recognition. Finally, the smallest cub stepped forward. It was the one Hana had privately called Nara, though she had never spoken that name aloud. It walked to where Ambassador Krelthar sat. It looked up at him for a long moment, then made a choice. It pulled up images of the Valeran homeworld but not the facilities. Instead, it showed cities, public spaces, gathering areas. It pointed at these, then at itself. Then it did something that made several committee members gasp. It pulled up an image of cubs, dozens of cubs, and drew lines connecting them. A network. A movement. This one wants to organize, Talrin said, her voice full of wonder. It wants to find other cubs and teach them. Create a movement of young Valeran who know their own minds. Krelthar stood slowly. He walked to where the small cub stood. You wish to start a revolution, he said. The cub chirped once. Yes. You are very small for such a large task, Krelthar said. The cub looked at him steadily, unafraid. It made a series of sounds that needed no translation. Its meaning was clear in its posture, its expression, its absolute certainty. It says, Jin translated anyway, that it has always been big enough. Everyone just needed to notice. Krelthar knelt down. If you do this, my people will resist. They will say you are too young, too confused, too corrupted by human influence. They will try to stop you. The cub reached out and touched the ambassador's face again, the same gesture it had made the day before. Then it chirped softly. It says, Talrin translated this time, that you resisted once too, that you didn't want to believe, but you decided to listen. If you can decide to listen, others can too. The ambassador closed his eyes. When he opened them again, something fundamental had shifted in his expression. Yes, he said, others can too, and I will help you. I will stand with you when you tell them the truth. Wu stood. The committee has seen enough. All in favor of recognizing these 4 individuals as sentient beings with full rights under the Self-Determination Accord. Every hand, claw, tentacle, and appendage rose. Unanimous, Wu said. Let the record show that on this day, 4 Valeran cubs have demonstrated consciousness, agency, and the capacity for complex choice. They are people. They have always been people. And their choices will be honored. 3 days later, Hana stood in the station's departure bay. 3 ships waited on different platforms. The largest cub was boarding the first ship with Talrin, who had volunteered to help it navigate the collective systems. The third cub was boarding the second ship, bound for Earth with a human guide named Mira. The smallest cub stood with Ambassador Krelthar, preparing to board the third ship to begin the difficult work of changing hearts and minds. Only the second cub remained with Hana. It held her hand with its small paw and watched its littermates prepare to leave. Are you sad? Hana asked it softly. The cub looked up at her and made a sound. Not sad, something else. Jin, standing nearby, smiled. It says it's proud. Proud of what they all chose. Proud to have littermates who were brave enough to choose their own paths. The 4 cubs came together one last time. They touched foreheads, made their chirping sounds, and stayed connected for a long moment. Then they broke apart. Each turned toward their chosen path. As the ships began to depart, the cub beside Hana drew on a nearby window with its paw. The same symbol it had drawn so many times before, circles connected by lines. But this time the circles stretched across space, connecting 3 ships, dozens of worlds, millions of possible futures. Hana watched the ships disappear into the stars. Somewhere out there, the largest cub would fight to reform an ancient system. The third cub would study human history and learn about revolution. The smallest cub would organize and inspire and prove that size didn't determine strength. And here beside her, the second cub would learn and grow and become whatever it decided to become. Security asked why they were following me. Hana said to no one in particular. But they were never following. They were deciding. Every single day, every single moment, they decided who to trust. They decided who to learn from. They decided what kind of people they wanted to be. The cub beside her chirped softly and squeezed her hand. And that, Hana continued, smiling through her tears, makes all the difference in the universe. Above them, stars wheeled in their ancient patterns. Across the galaxy, 4 small beings began to change the world, not because anyone gave them permission, but because they had decided it was time, because they had always been real, always been conscious, always been people. They just needed someone to notice. And now finally everyone would.